Hey guys, hope my audio's working here. Thanks for tuning in. Um, if you don't know me, I'm Darren Whitley. I'm a multimedia specialist. I specialize in graphic design, photography, and now in video production. Today, what I'm going to be doing is we're all stuck at home, so I want to show you some ways you can still be inspired by things around you in terms of seeing graphic design. So part of the trick here is going to be pulling away all the distractions from the things that are around you, so that you can see the things that you could potentially take away from graphics that you'll get at home and that you'll find at home. And how those might be something that you could repackage or reuse those ideas, those basic ideas for designs you'd use in a video production. So with that, we'll move over to my screen. Okay, so we're going to be going through these images in Photoshop, and at first you're going to see this is just a Pizza Hut flyer, but what you might be missing are some of there's a couple design elements in this specifically that I liked. So we'll close this out and I'll let you see. Well, let's move over here. So I've cropped out this design box, and if you look at this, you might realize this might have inspired our opening slate today. So a couple comments on this. If you looked at the slate that we used before we went live, you'll notice that I used the box. And one other thing I want to comment on is that we have some type contrast going on here. So the top font is bold, the lower typography is a regular version of probably the same typeface. One other thing I really pick up on this that I really like is their use of the periods. If you were to make this for use in a broadcast, we'll go over that in a bit. It looks like the word is not as bolded as the H, these bolds on the H. In fact, you look at the I here, so they're playing with your eyes a little bit there and kind of doing some mind tricks on you. And then here's another thing I liked that came out of this this ad for Pizza Hut is you've got these lines here around their to celebrate their Hut Rewards program. How I might use this in a broadcast. One of the things is I like the negative space around this pizza icon. And if we were doing this for broadcasting, this might be two words that have to do with football. Maybe on the left we have the team mascot, like Blue Jays over here on the left, and on the right it'd say football, and then right here we would replace that with a vector football graphic. And then the lines, those are, we'd use the lines for unity. So maybe we'd go with a brown and white theme would kind of be the color palette we'd work with, and our black would be our third color. So that would be kind of cool. There might be a way that with the football we could bring in some kind of something that would reflect on the school, the mascot. If the football, there was a way to maybe put a feather on the football or something like that that would have to do with the school logo. That'd be pretty cool. Move over here. Let's see here. All right. Now let's go to our next example today. And the point of this is I want you to be inspired by the things you're getting in the mail. So this idea all came up yesterday as I got into the mail. So this very cluttered advertisement for Rent-A-Center. And the thing I'm taking away from this is the big bold Black Friday logo design here. I don't know that I would use this circle portion, But if you wanted to make a nice full screen graphic, I like this diagonal line that this has. This is reminiscent of a recent graphic that we was built by a student at KLHS with this line that goes in the middle of the typography that I really like. So this is very easy to see how you could potentially do this all in school colors. Instead of it being green, it would be the light blue that we use. In fact, the white could even be light blue, and this becomes a full screen graphic. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, here's a Zaxby's flyer. The one thing I wanted you guys to see about this side specifically was here at the top is how they put this wood grain background in. The logos are all fundamentally perfect, but I like how they add this natural, this texture that we're accustomed to in real life. The computer graphics are all perfect, but then you get a little bit of, this realistic wood grain in the background. And I think they use that. If you look, that continues all the way down to kind of unify this, this piece of mail. All right, let's move on. All right. And then on the other side of their ad, the thing I wanted you to see is in the next slide. So what they've done here is they have a canvas texture. And so if you wanted to do a background that's like a solid tone like this, and you wanted that texture pattern, there are texture patterns you can get off the internet, and you just use your blending modes in Photoshop to mix those two together. And then the other thing about this that I wanted to point out is at the top, we have this perfect logo for the company. It's got this nice arc. There's actually 3 different fonts here. There's a little bit of a trick there. What they've done is the bottom 2 are unified with this wood type stamp distressing that's in this. Where that comes from is the old, what we call letterpress printing. Is where that comes from, that design inspiration. And so they've actually unified the bottom 2 fonts. They're different colors, they're different typefaces, but they're unified by the distressing. So this is, again, I want you to be able to see this kind of design, and I don't know exactly how it might be used in a broadcast, but I want you to be able to kind of tune in, focus in on that. Okay. All right. Okay, so here, really want you to see this element of this is, I like this potentially for a lower third design. This really skinny font. I don't know how well this would work in broadcasting to have a really skinny typography face like this, but this would be very, very easy to build in Photoshop. In fact, let me just show you really fast. If you're just trying to sort of, do this, we're going to come over here to the toolbar, and this is the shape tool, and we just draw, let's just draw over the top of this. The proportions don't really, we're just going to get the proportions right now. And, okay, and then I need to turn off the stroke. All right, and it's probably easier if I filled that with black. All right, so now let's zoom in a little bit. And then go back to the pen tool, or this. This is for working with vector shapes, and we're going to add a point right here in the middle. And you don't have to be accurate. And then that right now has these control points, and we want to remove those. So you're going to hold down the Option key and click here, and we want to bring that in, and then we can kind of put it right there in the middle where it needs to be. And a trick. Let's see here. Let's zoom on the other end to do the same. Spacebar pulls it over. P for pen tool. Click it one time. Hold down the Option key to remove those control points. Now you're holding down the Command key to pull it over. And one last thing is, let's pull down a guide. This way you can scroll over and make sure they're both where you need them. Okay, so those look to be pretty uniform. Let's see if that one, let's bump that up a pixel, or maybe not. Okay, let's zoom back out. All right. And then, so this is something you could use very easily in broadcast. And if we need to put it into a broadcast canvas size, we come here to canvas size under the image menu. And let's go over here. Let me pull over my dialog box so you guys can see this. We want to be in pixels. And to be in high def, we need to be 1920 by 1080. All right, let's back out. Now the picture in the background doesn't matter anymore. And if you wanted to do this, I could see this possibly just being something, an element that you would just put over. Here, let's go over here to layers. And let's turn off the background for a moment. So this might just be something that we use as like a little tag and not use as a true lower third. But you could do that. Let's change the color real quick. So if you double click in here, just going to bring this up. And typically we're a little bit in the blue palette. So let's just for quickly. And then you know what? Another thing to add just a little bit of layering to this, a little more depth. Let's make a copy of that. So that's Command J. And then I'm going to move this back behind. And I'm going to go back to setting that at white again. Let's go back to white. Hello. There we go. Come on over. Computer's working so hard today. All right. So that's there. All right. So now let's do this. Let's fill this background with black so we can kind of see what it would look like. And then this white one, I just kind of wanted to create some depth. Hello. Are we white? I don't know what that's here. Okay, hang on. That is white. And then...
You're recording.
Yes, I am. I'm live streaming. Oh, it's giving me fits, guys. Let's try this one more time. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Jump. Mark.
I think that's working.
Double click. Switch it over to white. Let's go. Come on now. All right. Move tool. Trying to create. Oh, there we go. That's what I want. I don't know if you guys like that. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Maybe it's better if it's just a single layer. Anyway, let's move on to the next idea. All right. Okay, so here's the thing I wanted to show you on this that I liked specifically. One of the things I liked is how, although the background is blue, they're using a second tone of blue on top of it. I like the transparency that blue has. I thought that was really cool in this publication. But let's get up here. Here's another example, and what I wanted you to see is, again, we're back into the topic of typography contrast. Actually, what I found kind of interesting was how the top font is skinny, and then they complement it with a bolded lower font. I'm often going the other direction, where I bold the top and I'm skinny on bottom, a skinnier font, lower, lighter weight font on bottom. But I'm tuning into this, and I'm paying attention to what they're doing, and I like how it's working. And then they kind of extend this design style from the headline into this sort of lead-in paragraph or theme paragraph. It's not really a subhead. It's sort of an entry point.
What? You're doing good.
You're crashing my show. All right. Okay, let's pull that. We can close that away. All right. So again, here's another thing about type contrast. So there's not. Actually, the tops of these bottles are really pretty. And another takeaway from that is I see how they mirror that element up above with this little pennant or flag or banner that comes down. That's really cool. So let's move over to the next image, and I'll show you just. So we have this contrast of a brush script logo for the company, and then they use a sans serif font. And I don't know if you all recall, but I often complain about people using serif fonts, and you'll notice that much of the design examples are going to use a lot of sans serif fonts. So that's typography that does not have the little feet, such as, let me just type on here real quick with something. Let's make this fit so you guys can see it. And right now, the words that I put up here are Times New Roman, but that is not Times New Roman. I want you to see here. Let's do this. That's not it. Right now, this is I think that was Avenir, but I want you to guys see Times New Roman is probably a really good example of. Let's try. Times New Roman, regular. So this is a good example of a serif font versus a sans serif font. So above, I have those words in a sans serif font. That means it doesn't have these little hooks or feet, such as the letter T here shows you. So you see all these little embellishments that the typography has. All right. Let's not, won't spend any more time on that. Let's move on over to the next example. Okay. All right, so I really like this. We just talked about a banner, and let's move on to the next picture because I have it kind of more isolated. Some really good things going on here. This is an interesting. I really like this banner that they have hanging down. I've actually used a banner or pennant like this before with design work that I did for a Veterans Day breakfast by the school district. Notice that there's a diagonal. They're kind of building this diagonal here, even in the typography on the on this banner. What you'll notice is these are serif fonts. You know, they're not overusing it. It's very subtle. But these are sans serif on the sides here. Really like it. There's just a lot of detail built into this this element here. This is what we would call two decks, because there's an upper deck of type and a lower deck. That's, you know, maybe somebody else will correct me, but that's how I would refer to this. And then the other thing I wanted you to see is that this also has some of that distressing that resembles a wood block typeface. And then this has actually been manipulated. This arc of the typography is something that you would actually do in Adobe Illustrator. That's how you would do an arched lower font. Photoshop has some tools like that, but the best way to do that is in Adobe Illustrator. And I don't particularly like Adobe Illustrator, so, but we've already talked about that. And I don't think I'm going to save that. I'm just going to kind of keep moving forward here a little bit. Sorry while we rewind. Okay. Whoops. Going to the end. Okay, so whoopsies. We missed something. Here, let me get you to the main composition real quick. Okay, here's the big composition, and then the two things I want to talk about on this are actually you've already seen, but we'll get to it. Okay, so here again, type contrast, brush script, and then mixed with the sans serif. And then another way to create contrast is they're doing it with color. So we've got the gray, the green, and the black on a white background. So that's nice and very sensible. And again, talking about type contrast, here we have the logo as one of the fonts. Even within the logo, there is type contrast because you go from a everything being non-italicized, and then the F is sort of an italicized element of that logo. And that helps distinguish it from just the typeface that you could just type out. We've got a little bit of a breaking line here that breaks this, creates a margin between the two. They're using the same spacing. That's something I feel like I've always been pretty sensitive about is spacing and symmetry. Where this part here with the words let's and get are what we call that's in all caps. If we were in Photoshop and we were typing that out, let me just put this up here. Okay, so by default it's all lower, but you can quickly go into your options for type, and if you look right here, I believe it's called all caps, or maybe superscript is how they refer to it, I'm not sure. So I click that and it's supposed to all switch. Here, let's try it. I got to select it all, and then let's switch this over to sans serif. So let's do we'll just switch to an Arial narrow bold. So you can see how quickly you can you don't have to type that out with the caps lock down to get to being in all caps. And again, lastly, the third font being this brush script again. So this does have some unity because they're all in the same color palette, but it's a really pretty small element of the entire page. Okay, let's move on. Oh, I like this page. There were some really cool things going on. Down here, I was like looking at this. 5 ways. This headline is kind of nice. I like the. Again, we're talking about the difference between, we've got the very light regular typeface and then the bolded lower subhead. So that's really cool. I thought these graphics down the side were really nice. How they mix their type and their graphics together. And if you look at the overall page, there's a nice contrast and sense of scale. So we've got a very dominant entry point with this image of the bowl. And the headline obviously is the largest headline element on the page. And then everything else cascades in terms of like the weight and the emphasis of it on the page. So that's another design thing that you need to look at when you're designing graphics, whether it's for publication or broadcast, that you use a nice emphasis so that there's a good entry point to your graphics. Okay, so this page, really super busy page, but there's 2 things I wanted to take away from this. And we're just going to keep going back to that, aren't we? I really liked how they used these 3 different words, and then they changed the orientation to kind of turn it into a logo. So you actually have a logo within a logo. This one step, Hy-Vee one step, is actually one whole kind of logo thing that they've created, a branding thing, and they've it's kind of funny that they've got the restricted symbol in there twice. But I thought this was really well done. All this stuff, much of this stuff we're going over today, came in the Hy-Vee Seasons magazine. Their magazine is really just a really good design publication. It's done in, I believe it's done in Des Moines, Iowa, and the people that do it just do a fantastic job. So here you might not see anything that really stands out to you, but what I really wanted to point out were a couple things. And first off, I wanted to show you how they've got this broken margin. We talked about spacing earlier. I talked about how sensitive I am to spacing, but what I wanted to point out here is how this photograph breaks this margin of this solid color background. And then as a complement to that, you've got this sort of seedling type vector graphic here that then breaks both margins and kind of comes in and encroaches on the photograph. So I think that's really cool. And again, like this sort of pull quote over here, they actually are a mirror copy of what their headline style had been many places. So instead of the light typeface at top, they're especially because this is a knockout where you're putting the white typography on a solid color. It is really important that this pull quote be in the bolder font. This is more of a printing issue than maybe a broadcast issue for broadcast graphics. But I totally agree with this decision to flip the weights of the two fonts. Okay, and then this page is kind of similar, and I liked how these bolded words are your kind of your entry point into this page. Let's see here, and I think this is there. I just think that's really a nice contrast. Don't have to say a whole lot more about it. I just trying to call out attention to it. This page is really cool. I'm not usually I don't know. Maybe for you Mizzou fans, you'll like it more than I do. But black and gold, black and yellow, they always work together. They can work together very nicely. This is a really nicely designed page. This is very interesting how they've turned the number 4 into a graphical element. And if we move over here to the next picture where I've kind of isolated this, very cool, very, very cool stuff. This is sort of a vintage method of doing things with this underline of the 0 or for number. And another takeaway from this is I like how the yellow caret over here carries out that color theme to the to make this bullet point. What else? There seems like there's one more thing from this page. Oh, and then I think this is called a folio. This comes from the bottom corner of the page, and this sort of resembles some other things we looked at, but here you have the Hy-Vee logo. And then they do this type contrast thing. The weights are the same. This is kind of blurry, but you'll see that the name of the magazine is Seasons, and they've got this line to break as a margin, and then the date of the publication is in an italic font. Same weight, but they kind of contrast the two. And you've got the italic font, which then contrasts from a regular font that's all in caps. So I thought that was just something, a small detail to call attention to. Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to look at this here on the bottom, and I think this kind of is a little bit repetitive, but just again, type contrast. These dots would be something, I think those would be difficult for broadcasting, but I think you could easily turn that red line into the red lot. Those red dots could easily become a red line instead. And I don't think that you need to necessarily use the whole height of this. I think if we just, trim off, maybe this becomes, let's crop that. So maybe this is a lower third that we're trying to design. Let me clean up some of this here. Oh wait, sorry. My bad. Oh man. And then let's see here, a red. Let's pick a red. Okay. So the basic idea is that you could kind of have some sort of entry word text on the left in bold. The right hand side would be a lighter weight font. Let's see. Okay, so that's kind of what I've got. This is the publication that I took a lot of these ideas from. My point is, there's design inspirations all around that you should try to keep your eyes open, your mind open, and anything that you're creating, even if you're doing a PowerPoint, these design ideas can really extend to your other classes and the other work that you're going to do. I know the past couple years that I've looked at the student newspaper at Liberty, I've been actually really impressed by some of the designs I've seen some of the students do, especially when they use negative space in their publication. And that for me I always want to stop in the hallway and check that out, and because I've been impressed with some of the growth that I've seen by students in those other classes. I just hope you guys will be inspired and look for ways to set yourselves apart from one another, and how to make your broadcast packages really stand out from one another so that they can look professional and look really good and represent the high school well. So with that said, I will conclude this broadcast. I hope if you have any feedback, other topics you'd like me to discuss, I'd be more than happy to for you to leave your comments below, or you can always hit me back on the GroupMe chat. Anyway, with that said, take care, everybody.